Hi, thanks so much for joining us today and taking a couple hours out of your day to learn more about disaster preparedness. As Marilyn said, please put any questions or comments in chat or Q&A, and we'll address those after the presentation. I just need to say that we might mention products or companies that as examples, but we are not endorsing them. My name is Charlene Wilson, and Barbara Bracken is my co-presenter today. The program is supported by the City of Tualatin and FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and it's presented as a program through Tualatin CERT. Now, CERT is the Community Emergency Response Team, and both Barbara and I are members of that. CERT members volunteer and make a commitment to emergency preparedness for our neighbors and our communities. So that this is one piece of that. We present Tualatin Neighborhood Ready not as a fear tactic and not to scare anyone, but to offer information and tips to help you prepare and feel more confident in case of a disaster. Likely many of you have already been collecting and storing emergency supplies, but we hope you'll find some new information and helpful tips today. So, we talk about emergencies, we talk about disasters. What's the difference? In an emergency, something happens that's beyond your capability and you need immediate help, and you probably call 911. So you'll have a responder from police, fire, medical, or possibly utilities. In a disaster, it's a widespread event, and the first responders will be overwhelmed and not able to come to your aid. So who then can help you? We like the acronym YOYO. You are on your own. You'll need to depend on yourselves and your neighbors. And when people are prepared, they feel more confident and competent during times of crisis. So what kinds of disasters do we have in this area? You might think back to the past year. We had a windstorm and forest fires. And then we had our big snow and ice storm. In addition, in the past, we've had flooding in Tualatin. There's always a chance of earthquake. And there's a lot of industry in Tualatin, plus the railroad tracks go through. So there's always the risk of a chemical accident. Much of what we're going to talk about today is about earthquakes, but preparedness applies to all of these risks. So how might these affect you? Of course, we know recently for some people, we can have power outages or the possibility for evacuation. And then there's always the risk of an earthquake. So how can you be more prepared? In this presentation, we'll talk about preparing for possible disasters, including reducing your home hazards, preparing emergency supplies, and saving water, what to do in case of a disaster, especially an earthquake, and the benefits of knowing your neighbors better and finding and sharing resources. We're going to present a lot of information. You might want to jot down some notes of things that catch your attention, but know that we'll provide these slides and other information as email attachments after the presentation. That includes a supply lists, information for seniors, and information for people with special needs. You should also have received, or you also will receive, attached to an email, is our booklet for Tualatin Neighborhood Ready that will have a lot of the same information in it. You can go through it at your leisure and decide what applies for you and your situation. And it also can be found at the Tualatin CERT website. And this is the address for that, tualatincert.org/Tualatin Ready. So Barbara.
Hi, I'm Barbara. Thank you. I add my thanks for you joining us today. Take a look at this pyramid image. The Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, maybe some of you have either experienced that earthquake, that major earthquake, or something similar. That earthquake was a 6.9 magnitude, and it lasted approximately 15 seconds. The Cascadia subduction zone earthquake is expecting to be an 8 to 9 point earthquake lasting 3 to 6 minutes. It's going to be exponentially more damaging. At the top of this image in the pyramid, you'll see that the feds, which are the National FEMA organization, are designed to provide aid after disaster. We've all seen some of their recent responses around the US, both good and bad, successful and not so successful. The state, Oregon State, or regional FEMA, would probably take about 2 weeks for them to arrive from Bend. They actually moved their headquarters over there. They're charged with infrastructure, roads, utilities, communication, the airport. Our critical facilities are built on filled land. Our gasoline supply is actually only about 2 days for the city, and it's located in Northwest Portland. That land will probably liquefy. This small reserve will be kept for emergency responders, and will highly encourage you to keep your gas tanks at least half full. The Bull Run water system to Tualatin is about 65 miles of pipe. The good news is there's actually 2 lines. The bad news is they're both solid steel. It's going to require inspection taking weeks and months. It may require you to come to water distribution locations with empty containers. So keep some empty containers on hand. This next slide shows what we call a recovery estimate. And this is what the state has been working on to shorten these restoration times. You can see there the potential problems: electricity 1 to 3 months, drinking water a month to a year. Actually, it's been a year in the Christchurch, New Zealand earthquake. Let's look back at that pyramid for just a second and take a look at our local city. They are charged with shelters, communication, water distribution, and local roads. Meridian Park Hospital will lock its doors. They will have set up 3 triage tents out front, but they will obviously only take in the most injured people. When you call 911, responders are going to be overwhelmed. Firefighters, we generally in Tualatin have only 5 to 7 on shift at any one time. Their mantra is the greatest good for the greatest number. And they're charged with doing what's called a windshield survey, which takes a survey of Tualatin as a whole. They're first going to go to the schools now that they're coming back in session. Then they'll go to the hospital. And then they're going to check on a lot of that industry, especially west of town. A lot of chemicals out in some of that industrial area. Then they'll obviously be checking on their equipment and themselves for damage. Roads may be impassable. They could even be on the other side of the freeway and the bridges are collapsed and no one can come. Our individual responsibility is what we're going to talk about today. So one of the first things that we'd like you to do is do 2 registrations. We have them listed there, publicalerts.org. This system is for critical alerts only, weather, earthquake, etc. It's not that there's a traffic jam at the Boone Bridge. You can register multiple phones and addresses, and we recommend that you do so. Maybe your kids, maybe your caregiver, something like that. Different local systems are available for different cities. So for instance, if you have a place at the beach, it very well may have a different public alert system, but you can find out what it is. The second one that is live today is called Quake Alert USA. Download the app to your phone. It's designed to give a 30 to 60 second warning alert of an earthquake greater than 4.5, depending on your location. It allows you a few extra seconds to take some precautions. Duck, cover, and hold, you've probably heard of, and hopefully prevent some serious injury.
Thanks, Barbara. This lists some of the other things that we're going to cover today, so I won't read them. The first is underbed kits. The majority of injuries that happen in an earthquake don't come directly from the earthquake itself, but from broken glass and possible fires. And think about it, you spend about a third of your day in bed. So an underbed kit with supplies that you could easily reach could help you if an earthquake hits when you're in bed, especially when it's dark. The main things are you want to protect your feet and your hands and your head. So an underbed kit involves taking a bin or a basket, a grocery bag, a box, and putting these things in it. And it might help to tie it to a leg of your bed, or you could put it on the bottom shelf of a bedside table if you don't have room underneath your bed. So a flashlight, because if it's dark, and the power's out, you're gonna wanna have something to see with right away. A flashlight or a headlamp. A helmet to protect your head. Maybe you have a hard hat or a bicycle helmet laying around that you're not using. You can also get a hard hat for $10 to $15 at Home Depot. They have cheaper ones, but you want to make sure you can get one that's adjustable. Leather gloves are best for protecting hands from glass, better than cloth ones. You can look for them in hardware stores, gardening stores. For people with small hands, we've seen that Weimart has small leather gloves there. You want to have sturdy shoes so you can put something on your feet right away. And ideally, you'd have a whistle just in case you were in trouble and needed to call for help. It takes a lot less energy to blow a whistle than to call out loud. A face mask for dust, protecting your eyes with goggles or safety glasses. And then you might want a small crowbar. Sometimes in an earthquake, door frames get knocked off center and you might need a crowbar to open a door. Also, we suggest having an okay or help sign, and we'll talk about these later. This is to put up in case, to help communicate outside of your house, the situation inside your house. And if wherever you're storing these, you can attach Band-Aids to them so that you automatically have tape to use to put them in the window. So imagine an earthquake in your own home situation. What might fall or hurt or even kill you or someone you love? We suggest you go room to room sometime soon and look up, look down, look around you. Imagine an earthquake and consider a number of things. Are there some heavy or tall items like a bookcase or a tall file cabinet that could fall over and hurt someone or block an exit? These should be attached firmly to studs in the wall so they won't fall. You can use furniture cables or nylon straps, maybe a metal L bracket, but you want to attach them to the studs so they don't rip out. Then what do you have hanging from the walls or the ceilings? You can get closed picture hooks for things that are hanging from the walls. And another thing is if you have a glass vase that's heavy and you don't use it very often, you put it on top of a shelf or a cabinet, that could fall. You want to move heavy items down lower so they're less of a risk of hurting somebody. And then if you have a freestanding TV, a computer monitor, other electronics, including like a microwave, you can use straps to secure those or get a plastic mat so they don't slide as easily. And then consider items that are in cupboards or on shelves that could fall or fly across the room. There are various cabinet latches around there, including childproof latches. Every cabinet's a little different, so you have to find something that works for you. But here's a couple examples on the side of safety straps and cabinet latches. The other thing is you want to make sure as you walk through the house that you have light sources easily available throughout the home in case there's a power outage. You can get flashlights that plug into outlets that are constantly charged. You can also get security lights that will come on if the power goes off, and that would be really helpful. And then there are battery lanterns you could place at different parts and places in the house. And also make sure you have a whistle somewhere that you could use to signal for help. If you have special equipment, hearing aids, oxygen tanks, things like that, you want to make sure that they have a place to be secure when they're not being used. You might think about attaching a box or a small container with Velcro to your bedstand so it wouldn't go flying off, to hold your eyeglasses and hearing aids. Also, if you require walking aids, keep those near you at all times. And if you have more than one, have them in different rooms so you always know something's available. Another thing to consider, if you have a garage, be sure you know how to open it if the power goes out. On another day, do a home tour and take inventory photos or video of all your possessions. So just in case you would need that for insurance purposes. Now looking at bigger things in your home, do you have large glass windows? It's possible to install safety glass or get safety film to put on your windows so they have less of a chance of shattering. For gas appliances, they should have flexible tubing on them. I just realized I have my mouse so I can point to things. They should have flexible tubing on them, and you could just check and make sure that's the case. If you store chemicals indoors or in the garage, make sure they're nice and secure, possibly with straps across so they wouldn't slide off as easily. And if they're stored in glass, switch it to plastic containers. Make sure that the exits from your home are accessible. Like, is there a couch in front of a sliding glass window that would make it hard to get out? And then, especially for homes that were built in the 70s or 80s or earlier, they may not be attached to their foundation. And foundations and chimneys can both slide and cause damage in an earthquake. To inspect your foundation and chimney, you really need to leave that to the professionals. And if needed, consider investing in having the home bolted to the foundation. One of our local resources for this is a company called Northwest Seismic. So walk through your home and think about how you can secure things. Think about what your priorities are there. So what do you do if you feel an earthquake? What do you do as it starts shaking? The current instructions are drop, cover, and hold. So drop to your knees or drop to the floor so you don't get knocked off your feet. Cover your neck and head to protect it. And if you have something to get under a table or a bench or whatever is there, and hold on just in case that it starts sliding across the room. If you're in a wheelchair, lock it, cover your head and neck for protection, and hold on to something if you can. If you're inside and don't have a sturdy table or bench to get against an inside wall away from windows and tall furniture. And if you're in bed, stay in bed, cover your head with a pillow. I grew up in California and my first inclination is always to get in a doorway. That is not recommended anymore. That's old news. So walk through your home on another home tour and think about in each room, what would you do? Where would you go to protect yourself if there was an earthquake? If you're outside, move away from buildings, trees, chimneys, anything that could fall. And if you're in a moving car, you might feel an earthquake like a flat tire. Pull off to the side of the road away from things that could fall, especially bridges and overpasses, and stay in the car until the danger has passed. Another thing you want to know ahead of time is what to do in case of a fire. Every responsible family member should know how to use a fire extinguisher. We use the acronym PASS, pull the pin, and that's what keeps the fire extinguisher from activating. So you pull it out so you can use it. You aim it at the base of the fire, because that's what's burning. It's not the flames. You aim it at the base, squeeze the handle to get the extinguishing flow going, and sweep it from side to side at the base of the fire. Fire extinguishers require maintenance. You just can't leave them there. Every 6 months, take it down, shake it upside down, because there's powder in there that can settle. So you want it to have it loosened up. And also check the expiration date. Fire extinguishers should be replaced after 10 years. And you can, if you have one that you're replacing, an old one, you can go out to an empty lot and practice this pass, practice using the extinguisher. If you want to recycle the extinguisher, you can take it to the Metro drop-off place in Oregon City. And then, of course, it's ideal to have a fire extinguisher and a smoke detector on each level of your home. Fires can grow within seconds to a size that you cannot control with an extinguisher. If a fire is bigger than a wastebasket, get out. It's better to save lives than trying to put it out with a fire extinguisher. So remember the PASS: pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Another thing you want to know about ahead of time is where your utility cutoffs, shutoffs are. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. You have a gas meter that's on the outside of your home, and there's a pipe that comes from the ground up to the meter and the house. It has a valve on it, and when it's running, the valve itself is parallel with the pipe. If you need to shut off the gas, you need to turn it a quarter of a turn to make it perpendicular. You can do that with a big wrench or a 4-in-1 tool. And ideally, you would have one of those stored near the gas meter in case you needed to use it quickly. But you don't want to turn off your gas unless you really, really need to. And you would do that if there was a fire, if you smelled rotten eggs, the smell of gas, or if you hear a hissing sound, which might indicate broken pipes, or if you see the dials on your meter, which are right in here, spinning really quickly, then you would want to turn it off because that means there's a leak somewhere. On a normal day, when a furnace or the water heater are running, you know there's gas being used, go out and look at the meter and see how quickly or slowly those dials are turning. So you have a reference if there was an emergency. Let's see. And another thing to remember is you don't want to turn off the gas unless you really need to, because you can't turn it back on yourself. The gas company has to come out and do that. And they have to check for gas pressure buildup. And as Barbara had mentioned, that may take weeks or even longer. Next thing to know is where your electricity panel is. Oftentimes they're in the garage or a basement or on the wall near an entrance. There's a main breaker at the top and then all the smaller ones. If you need to turn it off, start at the bottom with the smaller ones and work your way up to turn them off, and turn the main breaker off last. When you're turning them back on, turn the main breaker on first and do them, turn them back, the smaller ones back on. You can actually go to your panel and mark with arrows for shutting on and off. But you can turn off your electricity whenever you want, and you can turn it back on as well. But you want to turn it off definitely if there is sparking, a fire, a flood, or a burning smell. If there's a power outage, you also want to turn off most of your electronics, especially your computers, because there may be a power surge after when the power comes back on. And ideally, you'd leave on one light or a radio so that you would know when the power comes back on. And then the third thing to know is where does your water shut off? There's a water shutoff at the street, but you want to know where the one is in your house. It could be in the garage, it could be in a basement or a crawl space. It's not really necessarily obvious, so it's important to find it and label it. Where am I? The reason we want you to turn it off at the house instead of at the street is because there are pipes that run between the street and your house. And if they're cracked, you could be losing water out of that. And if there's a sewer pipe next to it that's also cracked, you could be getting contamination into your water, into the house. So you want to, if you're going to turn off the water, you can do it in your house or at your house. And feel free to do that anytime, and you can turn it back on anytime as well. In your house, if you can't be turning on the faucet, there's water stored in your water heater, 40 to 75 gallons. There's also water in your toilet tank, not the bowl, but the tank. And then you have ice cubes probably. If you've got water in pools, hot tubs, or you save roof runoff, those are not good for drinking. So
let's talk next. Thanks, Charlene. Let's talk next about some really important communication, that you have with each other. I'd like you to consider this: who depends on you and who do you depend upon? We want you to identify an out-of-state contact to notify of your status. For instance, if you're away from home, they become the central relay. So for instance, if you're away from home, you would call this out-of-state contact and say, I'm at Fred Meyer, I'm safe, I'm going to work my way home. Another person would call that same out-of-state contact, and as I say, they become the relay. Because of what they're anticipating, almost 800 miles potentially could be damaged along our coastline. Ideally, this would not be obviously Oregon, Washington, or Northern California. Be sure to let that out-of-state contact know what their job is and the numbers that might be calling or texting. Let's talk about calling. Cell phones will probably be shut down for 3 to 5 days minimum. We have all become so dependent on cell phones. The reason being is that the emergency personnel can actually take those over, and they're going to need all the communication available to them. If you do have a phone, an out-of-town call may be more successful. And even more successful than calling is texting, because it uses a different bandwidth. It's important that you know what kind of telephone you have. If you have a cordless landline, you may have just experienced this, it will not work during a power outage. An older telephone that plugs into the wall may work during a power outage. The other one that we feel pretty confident is going to be our best way to communicate, ham radio. So if you have had a ham license or would like to train for a ham license, think about renewing your old license. You can get a handheld ham radio for around $40. It's not a big investment, and it might be the best way to communicate. Practice fire escapes from every room. Check all your exits for easy egress. Identify 2 alternate routes getting home from the common places that you go. The next time you're out, count the number of bridges and underpasses of your frequent destinations. They may not survive an earthquake, so think of 2 different ways to get home. Research the disaster plans of your workplace, family, your caretakers, where you live, adult living, and apartment complexes or condo complexes. This sounds, again, just to reiterate, this is a lot of information, and please don't feel that you have to write all of this down. It's in the workbook and as a part of some mini lists that we'll provide for you later. Identify 2 people to check on you after a disaster. Tell them your needs, how to operate the equipment that you use, and where you keep your emergency supplies. Disabled people may have some additional needs, and those are part of these lists that we have for you. Identify a pre-designated meeting place outside your home in the event that your house is too damaged to re-enter. and an outdoor neighborhood site as well, like a school or a church if you can't go home. If you have electric life-saving equipment and you're dependent on that power for breathing machines or other life-sustaining medical equipment, work with your doctors, case managers, and caregivers to develop a plan on what you will do if the power goes out. Make sure you have backup batteries or generators available. Again, in advance, contact the local electric utility and local public service agencies if the lack of electricity would create an immediate threat to your life or safety. Keep extra batteries for hearing aids with your emergency supplies and replace them annually. Again, additional lists are available for seniors, disabled folks, and special needs. Next, start saving water. Remember, our water lines will need to be inspected after an earthquake that could take weeks or months. We have been told our fire hydrants will be shut off. Water distribution sites will be set up, but it's critical now to start saving water. The formula, 1 gallon per person per day for 2 to 3 weeks. That means that 2 people would need about 50 gallons of water for 3 weeks. You'll be very limited even at its use. Drinking, sanitation, and cooking are your priorities. You can purchase the small plastic bottles. That's an expensive way to do it, but it's convenient. They last almost indefinitely and are okay even past the expiration date. They may have a slight taste, but it's not going to hurt you. We also have great water here, and you can use the tap water. However, don't store your water in milk jugs. There's a lot of bacteria in milk, and it's hard to get everything out. So we recommend rinsing a plastic tonic or a soda bottle. Rinse it with water, add about 4 drops of unscented bleach, let it dry out, and fill it all the way to the top. Date and change these every 6 months. Don't throw it out though. Reuse it for watering your plants, a bird bath, washing your car. They also sell what are called squares. These hold 5 gallons of water, and they're water grade tubs. Now, 5 gallons of water, if you remember your physics class, weighs about 40 pounds. So obviously this is going to be for your home storage use only, not your go bags. Remember, infants and pets will take extra water. We also recommend that you store your water in multiple locations. Now let's talk about your go kits and emergency bags. Again, this is in the workbook for complete content lists, so you don't need to write all this down. Some people purchase a pre-made emergency kit, but be aware of the expiration dates. Others build one on their own using an off-the-shelf school backpack to store their supplies. Most of this you'll find that you already have in your home. It's a matter of gathering it all in one place. Every person and family has different preparedness needs. You will need access to your emergency supplies no matter where you are 24/7. You just don't know where and when a disaster will strike. Store an emergency kit at your home, work or school, and in each of your vehicles. Remember, be clear about your mission. What do you need to do? Do you need to get home? Do you need to evacuate your home? Will you be able to shelter in place? What are the conditions that you might be in? Consider the weather and temperature, your fitness level. It's really important to be honest about this. Thirdly, how long will you need it? It's important that you organize your emergency supplies. Choose a sturdy backpack with different storage compartments. Note all the different things that you might want to put in it. You might want to have some modular pouches with lists too. Add a duffel bag or an extra backpack to hold your additional supplies. Where I tend to overpack, I'll be wearing one on the front and the back. Organize your supplies by person. Add a personalized container like a small pouch to your emergency kit for each young family member. Label your bag with name, address, and contact information. Store all of your critical supplies, including your medications and personal items. If old enough, each person should have their own backpack. So like if you've got grandkids that visit often, you should be making one for them too. Keep a pet emergency supplies in their own dedicated duffel bag. Now let's get a little bit more specific. First, you want to pack a 1 to 2 day go bag. What if you were caught in a disaster away from home? What would you critically need? Be prepared. You may be prepared, need to be prepared to shelter in place for 24 to 48 hours. You may be required to stay at work. Store a go bag wherever you are frequently away from home. At the minimum, water, food, your critical medications, comfortable walking shoes, a poncho, face masks, disposable gloves, small cash, bills, and some change. We recommend a cell phone power bank, flashlight, emergency phone numbers, whistle, and perhaps even a small first aid kit. If you still are driving and have a car, think about adding an extra empty gas can, flares, matches, flashlight, eye scraper, jumper cables, blanket, maps, and some basic tools, screwdrivers, wrenches, and pliers. Now let's talk about evacuation. What would you want or need for a minimum of 3 days to potentially 2 weeks? What can't you live without? Start with your 1 to 2 day go bag. And what else? Choose a storage location close to your outside exit along your evacuation route. You can grab your go bag on the way. Let everyone in your home know where the kits are located. Keep this information for each household member in everyone's go bag. Name, social security number, a 2-week supply of medications, medical information, allergies, specialists, doctors, equipment and supplies. Your critical documents, including current photos of your family members and pets. You may get separated. Keep a list of pharmacists and your family members. Make sure you have this list with you at all times. You may want an extra pair of eyeglasses. Don't forget your house key and any irreplaceable items. Quiet entertainment, cards, and books, things that don't require electricity. Have a battery-operated radio with extra set of batteries or a hand crank or a solar radio. If you evacuate, leave a message in your home telling family members and others where you can be found. Some additional items for special needs. Again, extra hearing aid batteries, wheelchair batteries or a manual wheelchair, oxygen, copies of your medical insurance and copies, Medicare cards, your contact information for relatives or friends who are should be notified if you're hurt. Remember, if you have pets, they will need food, extra water, a collar with ID tag, restraints, leashes, car crates, their medical records, and other supplies for your service animal. Again, additional lists for infants, kids, seniors, and putting these kits together on a budget are all part of our package. Most emergency kits have a 5-year shelf life. However, some items may have a shorter life expectancy. Some items might degrade well in advance of their shelf life. It's important that you go through these. Replace expired items. Make sure you check on your first aid kit, your emergency food and water, batteries, and medications. Recharge your power banks. Replace outdated documents with updated versions. Insurance policies, medical information, and other important documents change frequently. Reevaluate your preparedness needs and add and remove items as necessary. Keep an updated inventory of all the items in your emergency kit and add expiration dates for each item, a list of what's in each bag. Change out your clothes seasonally. April and October is generally about when our temperatures really start to change. So that's a good time to do it. Or maybe when you think about the daylight savings time change is another just good reminder. Share your list with other friends and family members. It will help them understand what they might need in their kit. But remember, be aware of the weight of your bag. You may need to carry it. Now let's talk about home. This is where we all hope to stay, and we hope that your home is safe and can do so. But there may not be electricity or water for cooking or sanitation, possibly no gas for cooking or heating. This isn't just for 1 or 2 days. It could be for weeks or months. Think of our recent February storms, the August 2020 fires, if you remember the 1996 floods, and the 2011 Christchurch, New Zealand earthquake. Again, what can't you live without? The basics: water, sanitation and hygiene, food. You'll want non-perishable short and long-term food storage. Cooking methods, medicines, special equipment, clothing, documents, tools. Store your supplies in a cool, dry location and avoid places with large temperature swings. Temperatures degrade the packaging that contains your food and water. Use tightly closed plastic or metal containers. For instance, clean garbage cans with lids, tubs with lids. You might even use roller luggage. Store your food away from ranges and refrigerator exhausts. Heat causes many foods to spoil more quickly. And you don't want to store them next to petroleum products, such as gasoline, oil, paint, or solvents. Some food products will absorb their smell. Charlene?
Thanks, Barbara. You mentioned sanitation. So if you're stuck at home and you have no water and no power, you'll need sanitation supplies. So the #1 recommendation for this is get a pee and a poo bucket. You can get 2 5-gallon buckets with lids. You can buy them at hardware stores. You might be able to get them free at restaurants or from Metro. And you want them to have lids. Label them with pee and poo. And in our attachments, we're providing those labels. And if you want to, you can purchase toilet seats for the buckets. They're available at Cabela's or Dick's online. And nice thing to have in case you need to use these. You want to line the buckets with 13-gallon heavy-duty plastic bags and have some extras of those as well. And then you'll want to have supplies like toilet paper and hand sanitizer or wipes. We'll also be providing a list of other things you might want to store in these buckets. Now, pee, especially if you dilute it 1-to-1 with dirty water, can be just poured on your lawn or in your yard. But poo is considered hazardous waste. You can't just bury it in the yard. So you want to store it in plastic bags or containers, and eventually it'll be picked up by the garbage, but that could be weeks or months. And it's nice to have on hand some carbon materials to use in between or whenever it's used, like sawdust or shredded paper kitty litter or dry leaves. So we've talked a lot about prep. You've done all this prep or some of it, whatever works for you. What happens if there's a disaster, especially an earthquake? Number one is you want to take care of yourself and your loved ones. Turn on a portable radio for instructions and news reports, and be sure to cooperate fully with whatever the public safety officials say. And if it's an earthquake, prepare for aftershocks by staying in a safe location, because you never know when that's going to happen. Once you know that your loved ones and yourself are taken care of, then do an assessment of your home. Check on the natural gas or propane and shut it off if, again, there's a fire, gas smell, hiss, or fast moving dials. If it's a big earthquake, you'll want to shut off your water at the house. Again, not at the street. Also check your electrical panel to make sure there's nothing going on, and turn off your electricity if it's necessary. Those okay and help signs we talked about, which we will also be providing, take one of those and put it in the appropriate one in your front door or window so it can be seen from the street. This helps neighbors and search and rescue teams know your situation. If they go by and there's no sign, either no one's home or someone needs help due to injuries or home damage. If you have not used it, if it's available, place a fire extinguisher in front of your home so it can be used by a neighbor if needed. And then once you sort of feel like your home is taken care of for the moment, check on your neighbors. Speaking of neighbors, in a disaster, you and your neighbors will need to rely on each other. We've identified what's called a neighborhood six-pack. So your homes on either side of you, across from you, and the three across from you. So that's a six-pack. Ideally, you would get to know these people a little bit, at least so you know their skills, supplies, and their special needs, because that gives all of you the best chance of survival in a disaster. We'll be providing a contact sheet that can help you gather some of this information so you can share it between you. Also, we offer free Zoom gatherings so you can get a group of your neighbors together on Zoom at this point. Maybe in the summer we'll do it back on driveways. And this is a chance to learn and talk with your neighbors about disaster preparation and to become a more resilient neighborhood. If you're interested, contact Barbara at the email address that's here. So this is a lot of information. We know it can be really overwhelming. And there's a lot you might want to do, but you only can do one thing at a time. And everyone's different. Some people will want to do as much as possible, and some people will want or need to be a little more basic. It depends on your situation, and you have to figure out what works for you, what's best for you, and how to work toward that. You can't do it all at once. Maybe it works for you to take a weekend that's devoted to emergency supply collection, or maybe you figure you'll do one thing a week. In the booklet that we provide, there is a year-long, month-by-month plan to help guide you if you want to use it. It both includes collecting and purchasing things and activities each month. So that might be something you want to use. And then you can check off things when you've completed them. Just as a review, there are things you can do right away, however. The public alerts and Quake Alert USA apps, signing up, registering your phone, and registering to get information when there's a disaster are really important. Pull together your underbed kit. Most of the stuff you're going to have in your house already. There may be a few things you need to buy, but it's really helpful to have these all in one place at your bedside. Make sure you have plenty of light sources and easy access to them around your home. If you haven't already, start storing water. And if you have, add to it. You know, maybe every time you go to the grocery store, you buy a gallon of water. Identify and communicate your emergency contacts. Think about your home hazards and how you can reduce them, and start prioritizing what you want to do with those. And then with your go bags and emergency kits, just get started. But keep in mind, it's hard work. Do a little bit of it at a time. You know, I've been doing this for quite a while and I still have things I want to do. But anything you can do ahead of time, you know, to sort of prepare is a good idea. So
I have
Barbara,
things to keep doing too. I've got a lot of things on my list. Now's a really good time while we're still a little bit shut in to get started on this though. You need a new activity, this is a good one. Keep learning too. Personal preparedness, the resources and classes. There are much information on websites and YouTube videos. Take a first aid class, take a CPR class. Those are all great skills to have no matter what. Again, we offer these free Zoom meetings for your neighbors. We would both be happy to set that up for you. Just contact me at Tualatin Ready, MYN@gmail.com. You might consider joining our CERT team. We're a great bunch of volunteers. The classes are twice a year. There are 7 weeks of classes. Just contact tualatinCert@gmail.com. All skills are needed. We need retired medical people to be scribes. You don't need to be physically a he-man or he-woman. Consider getting your ham license or renewing your license. You can look up hamstudy.org to study online. Remember, preparedness and knowledge is conscious. Planning and preparation equals resilience. Talk with your family and friends. Get to know your neighbors. Consider this. How about a weekend camping trip right in your own home? You may have just experienced this last month, but if you didn't, try it out. No electricity, no water except for flushing. Turn down the heat. How would you fare? What would you cook? How did you stay warm? What'd you do for entertainment? And what do you need to rethink? Thank you, everybody.